Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's Medical Monday and a brand new episode of Should You Take That Case? You know our goal here. It is to be a resource for legal professionals who pursue medically related cases by sharing their experiences and insights as defense or plaintiff attorneys. I am still your host, Lisa Wade, friendly neighborhood legal nurse consultant, owner of Wade Nurse Consultants. There we are. Think of us when you have those tons of medical records that need to be translated into normal human language. Visit us at wadenurseconsultants.com. Well, I'm also the creator of our wonderful private LinkedIn community, Attorney Medical Record Resource Group. Oh, think of us when you have those confusing medical terminology that you want to get deciphered. Visit us there and join us. That is where, oh, excuse me, I got a little distracted. Please forgive me. But that's where we get all of our stellar attorney guests from our Attorney Medical Record Resource Group. And we use this as an opportunity to get to know one another. And we're going to do that today with Lindsay Lawrence from Ohio. But before we bring Lindsay out, we're going to toddle over to the comment section and see, is there anybody visiting us live today? If you are, and if you're a lawyer, put an L in that chat so we can see you and say hello. Put a P if you're a paralegal, but put a W if you are part of a wonderful group that I am a part of, Women Owned Law. It is a wonderful group that is a groundbreaking group created to connect and advance women legal entrepreneurs. So visit us at womenownedlaw.org and see if this is a group that you can get behind. Now, we thank everybody for taking precious time out of their busy days to be with us. And now it's time to introduce our guest, Lindsay Lawrence. And Lindsay's area of practice focuses on medical malpractice, birth injuries, traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury and paralysis, wrongful death, and personal injury. And she's been selected the last several years by super lawyers as a rising star. She's currently serves as the content editor for the professional negligence section of the American Association for Justice. And Ms. Lawrence is a compassionate yet tough advocate for children, individuals, and their families. And now we bring you Lindsay Lawrence. There you are.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to have you. How's the weather in Ohio?
It actually is kind of cruddy here today. I had to go to court this afternoon, and of course, the skies opened just as I had parked, and so we're having a couple thunderstorms rolling through. So I'm hoping that my power and/or internet does not go out.
Oh, well, I hope that too. But
Yeah.
if it does, we know what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
We're forewarned. Thank you. Well, let me say, we're going to ask you questions definitely about how you manage the piles of medical records that some come in some of your cases. But first, we want to hear more about you, Lindsay. We want to hear you tell us how you decided to be an attorney or how you ended up in this particular area of law. Share as much or as little as you want.
Sure. So I actually have several family members that are lawyers, and I have my father and my sister. I have an older sister who's 12 years older than me. She's the oldest, and I'm the youngest of five. And then two of my brother-in-laws are also actually lawyers. So I think a lot of people assume that because there's so many lawyers in my family that it was just kind of a given path, so to speak, that I thought was going to be kind of laid out for me to go to law school. But I think from an early age, I always thought, well, I can't do that because there's so many other people in my family that do that, so I should do something else. And I knew I always wanted a career and always wanted to help people and yet grow professionally and personally within some type of career. So it was not until I think it was my sophomore year of college that I finally made the decision to go to law school. And that was in part because my freshman year of college, I started off as a biology major, and I sat through my first calculus class, and I thought, as much as I like science, I am not willing to do this much effort for calculus. And I thought, well, you know what? I think deep down, I've always really wanted to be a lawyer. I think I kind of shied away from it because being the youngest, you try to do different things from your family. But so I eventually ended up going to law school and focused in on that decision. So I'm happy that I have.
Excellent. Well, STEM, at least you could have gone that way if you wanted to,
Yeah.
but you just didn't want to. So that's
Right.
okay. Oh, and how about now? Let me tell me a little bit about how you choose the cases. How do you decide that a case is right for you, or if you should get rid of that or refer it to somebody else? What goes into those decisions for you?
So initially, when I remember the first couple times as a young lawyer that I would talk to a potential client that would either call or email in to the office, and it was a little bit of an intimidating process initially as a younger lawyer, because you don't know if you're asking the right questions. You don't know if you're telling the individual the right or wrong things. And there's a lot of information to go over, I think, initially to figure out whether or not somebody has a case. So now that I've been doing this for a little over 12 years, I'm happy to say that process has gotten easier. But I think the first thing is you have to feel comfortable speaking with people and figuring out the easiest way to get to the point of why they think they have a case. And that requires a lot of detail and paying attention to what the person's saying. And if you yourself as a lawyer are not going to be handling the intake calls or the emails, I think it's also important that your staff are properly trained and educated on how to handle the intake calls. Because I know just in speaking with my paralegal, there's a lot of days where if somebody calls in or we're on overload with calls, she can sometimes get really overwhelmed, or sometimes she doesn't know everything to ask the person up front. So the first thing is to make sure that you have just a basic list of questions that you need to ask every intake. So essentially, who, what, when, where, and why. And then I think it's important too that if you have anybody that calls in with a death case or an injury to a child, that you take the time to further explore those cases. Sometimes people will call in or they'll email, and if something happened 10 to 15 years ago, you're gonna kind of know up front that it might not be something that you're able to help the person with. And one last thing that I'll say is that in Ohio, we have tort reform, and I'm also licensed in Kentucky, and we don't have tort reform. So that also really significantly plays a part as far as medical malpractice cases as to whether or not we are going to handle a medical malpractice case. And so I think in our area of practice with MedMal, we really, as a firm, do a cost-benefit analysis at the end of the day as to whether or not it's something we're able to handle. Because if I'm going to decline a case, I make sure to fully educate the potential client as to why we're unable to take the case. But then I make sure to send them out to either another lawyer or to the bar association so that they can obtain a second opinion. And I think it's important that any potential client that calls in, they realize they have options and other people they can contact.
Oh, that is good. Even if you can't take care of them, you make sure they know, the right direction to go for who can. So that's wonderful. And it sounds like a good, clear process in handling all of those incoming calls.
Yes.
And all of your staff being on the same page. Those are important details.
Yes.
All right.
And I think it's easy too for people to get overwhelmed with, there's going to be some days where you get a couple calls. There's more other days you have more calls or emails than others. And so it's important to have a quick and thorough process to, to make sure everybody's on the same page and to make sure you're keeping up with everything and fully informing the people that contact your office.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, when you decide that this is the case, or you're thinking about it and those medical records roll in, I'm trying to see what kind of process do you have or protocol do you have in place for combing through those medical records to get the good information?
So with every case that comes in, if we have a client that comes in soon after they are injured and we have time prior to the expiration of the client's statute of limitations, we will have the client request his or her own medical records. And nowadays, it's really easy for clients to do that. They can either log in to their MyChart account and directly request the medical records from their physician or another healthcare provider. Or if they don't have a MyChart account, we will have them sign a high-tech authorization, which essentially allows them to get a copy of their medical records for no more than $6.50. Because what we have seen a lot in Ohio and especially in other states, because high-tech is a federal law, in Ohio, sometimes what will happen is if a law firm sends a medical records request up front, depending on the healthcare facility, we have seen where the healthcare provider has tried to charge thousands of dollars for just a CD of medical records or emailing, like a link to a PDF version of the patient's medical records, which high tech establishes that they're not allowed to do that. So I try to have the client request their own medical records up front. And the reason why I do that is because if you end up pursuing the case at some point down the road in discovery, defense counsel will be providing you with their version of the medical records. And I have had cases before where medical records have been completely different. Whether or not there were things not included in the patient's medical record when they requested them, or there's different versions of medical documentation. So it's from a strategy standpoint and from an ease standpoint, I always have the client request the records up front. And obviously our office is there to help and assist them in getting a copy of their medical records. We're just doing it more behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah. Well, and that is handy, because I know for decades I've known and I've told people, working at the bedside, they're entitled to see and have access to their medical records.
Right.
And that's happened on maybe one hand, that many people in 3 decades that have actually done it, at the time of their care, but it's available. You're right.
Right.
All right. So when those piles of records finally make it there, or piles or digital piles, whatever, they get there and it's time to decipher them and look through them, what do you find, if any, the most frustrating, puzzling, or bothersome thing about reading or figuring out those records?
I would say the 2 main things that stick out in my mind. Number 1 is when your potential client doesn't receive a complete copy of their medical record. That, 9 times out of 10, that's going to happen. And the perfect example is if you have a client that undergoes a surgery, they request a complete copy of their medical record and the anesthesia record's missing. So, that's going to be an integral part of your client's medical records. And that's going to be something that once you are used to looking at medical records, that is going to be obvious to you as the lawyer that you're missing part of the patient's medical record. The second most frustrating thing I think would be is when a patient requests their medical records and then they they print and scan and then email them to the client, and you can't read. It's not an electronic version. In other words, it's like a photocopied, and that's not what you asked for. So I would say not having complete records and then having records that you can't even read are two of the most frustrating things we see as lawyers.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm reviewing records all the time. But the one handy thing is, even if it's not 100% clear, a lot of times I know exactly what's going on. So that's helpful.
Yep.
Okay. And you have given so much good information, so much wonderful details, and such good suggestions. Do you have any other wonderful advice to give to newbie attorneys getting into this same kind of practice that you are, or any ideas for veteran attorneys? Any more wonderful nuggets of information?
I think one last piece of advice, and I have to tell myself this sometimes too, is as lawyers, we have to remember to take our time and be patient with people that are calling in or emailing in. I think sometimes, we have so much going on as lawyers, just with our caseload, moving our cases, all the clients that we have, stuff going on in our personal lives. We all have a lot going on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's important to just remember to take your time. And when I tell myself that, and when I really take the time to educate somebody on either why I think they have a case or why I don't think they have a case, those people are always appreciative of you taking the time. And nowadays with, people doing Google reviews and Facebook reviews and all that stuff, I think from a, PR standpoint for your firm, that will pay off for you down the road so that you don't get any of those negative reviews by just kind of rushing people off to the side and trying to hurry up and get through the phone call or through the email. So I would just remind people to be patient, and that people are trying to contact you because they need help. And so be patient with people.
Oh, that's good. Being patient, being present, and just sitting still and listening. So that sounds like wonderful advice.
Thanks.
And I'm so glad that you're here giving all this wonderful advice. And I'm so glad you're here sharing all of your knowledge and experience. So now it's time for a little Q&A. If anybody's out there listening live and they have a question for Lindsay, she's going to get ready to answer that. Are you ready, Lindsay?
I am.
Oh, wonderful. And while folks are out there getting their questions together to place them in the comments section, now's the time for a little tiny sponsor break. So I can tell you real quick what we do here at Wade Nurse Consultants, and we'll get right back to Lindsay. Now, without a review and summary of medical records, it could be harder for you attorneys out there to know if you should take that case. And here at Wade Nurse Consultants, we give you a 1 to 2 page synopsis and opinion regarding the merits of those medical type cases. Using my 30 plus years of nursing experience to make quick work of those medical case screenings. So if you're watching this and you have already your own nurse paralegal on the payroll, this isn't for you. But if you have a backlog of medical case screenings, or you need to get clarity on some medical issues that you may not be familiar with, and you want to free yourself to focus on your legal strategies, here's what you should do. Right now, we are offering a free 20-minute medical record strategy call to help you hone an efficient, timely, and cost-effective routine around your medical cases. And you'll find in the comment section or in the description box of this YouTube channel a link so you can schedule a chat and have a consultation with us. Now it's time to get back to Q&A with Lindsay. Let me take a peek, Lindsay. Do we have any questions? Oh, not yet. That
Okay.
happens sometimes.
That's okay.
But we have a solution for that. And what I'm going to do is tell everybody that's catching us on the replay to look inside the YouTube description box in this YouTube channel and find Lindsay Lawrence's contact information. And if you have any questions for her and her about her practice in Ohio, you can reach out to her and just give her a call. Sound like a plan, Lindsay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. Well, once again, it's been wonderful having you here. I think we're coming to a close for this episode, and the only question I have for you left is, will you come back and do this again?
Of course, this was fun. I always love talking to people and, given any advice I can give. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And now let me give folks a little reminder to like and subscribe to this channel. And if you have any legal nurse consulting questions, email me, lisa@wadenurseconsultants.com. Find Lindsay's contact information inside the description box in this YouTube channel. And visit us next week or tune in next Monday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a brand new episode of Should You Take That Case? Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.